Greetings and welcome to Train Signal. You're watching Microsoft Link Server 2013 Administration and Role-Based Access Control. In this video, we'll be looking at the Link Server 2013 administrative tools, and we'll also take a look at Role-Based Access Control, which is the underlying security model used by Link. Let's start off with an overview of the administrative tools for Microsoft Link 2013. In order to administer the Link 2013 product, you have to have the necessary tools in order to be able to administer. Well, when you install a Link 2013 server, the administration tools are automatically installed on that server. So you can sit at the console of a server, or you can possibly remote into the server to gain access to the admin tools. As we're going to see throughout this video, you can also install the administrative tools on another server or on another client machine like a Windows 7 box or possibly Windows 8. Well, what exactly are the tools and how do we get them installed? The first administration tool is called the Link Server Control Panel. Your Link Server Control Panel is the graphical user interface. It's a web-based administration console. We also have the Link Server Topology Builder, and at this point we all should be very familiar with that because we had to use that to create our topology before we even installed Link 2013. It's also the tool that we use to make modifications to our topology, like for example, if we need to add some additional servers or possibly add some gateways. We also have the Link Server Deployment Wizard, which is an administrative tool that aids in the process of deploying Microsoft Link. Well, it's a little bit of a catch-22 because the Deployment Wizard is considered one of the admin tools, and when you install the admin tools, you get a shortcut for the Deployment Wizard. Well, we're going to see how to install the Deployment Wizard so you have access to it locally without having to run the setup program to get to it. For more advanced administration, we also have the Link Server Management Shell, which is a snap-in to the PowerShell 3.0 based environment for Link. It provides access to roughly about 550 different commandlets that are Microsoft Link specific. And finally, we have the Link Server Logging tool, and this is a tool that is used for diagnostic logging or for tracing. So if you're having problems with your Link server, and maybe you're even on a support call with Microsoft, you may have to use the Link Server Logging tool to gather information so that we can diagnose the problem. Let's take a closer look at the Link Server 2013 administration tools. The first thing that we're going to look at is the installation requirements. You can install the administration tools for Link 2013 server on a Windows Server 2008 R2 based operating system. Now, if you're looking to administer from a local desktop, Windows 7 SP1 is your cutoff, and we can also install it upon a Windows 8 based operating system also. Now, how do you go about installing the administration tools? Well, as you're going to see in my demonstration, what you need to do is gain access to the installation media for Microsoft Link Server. And you run the installation by running setup.exe. And setup.exe, when you run it, is going to install the Link core components, and then it's going to launch the Deployment Wizard. And from within the Deployment Wizard, there will be a link where you can install the administration tools. Let's take a look at a demonstration, and we'll see how this works. In this demonstration, we'll see how to install the Microsoft Link Server 2013 administration tools. Now, at Carve Rock Fitness, we have several administrators that are going to need the administration tools installed locally on their desktops. Keeping in mind that the admin tools are automatically installed on your Link servers, and we have the ability to install these tools on Windows Server 2008 R2 or SP2 based machines. We can also install them on Windows 7 based machines with SP1 or Windows Server 2008 based desktops also. It does require the 64-bit platform. Now, before I go through my installation demo, keep in mind that I've installed Microsoft Windows PowerShell 3.0, which is a requirement, and I've also installed the .NET 4.5 platform, which is also a requirement. So let's go to my D drive and take a look at what the installation looks like. Over here on my D drive, I've mounted the ISO file, Microsoft Link Server 2013. So as I've connected to the auto run, I'm being prompted for the location where I'm going to install the Link 2013 core components. Keep in mind that any additional installed components afterwards will get installed into that same location. Here I accept my licensing agreement. Now, the Link Server 2013 installation process is installing the core components. And then at the end of the installation of the core components, the Deployment Wizard should open up. Now, from inside of the Deployment Wizard, I now have the ability to click on the link to install the administration tools. And that was fast, and that was also very easy. We'll click on Exit, and then verify that I do have my administration tools, So over here I now have a Microsoft Link Server 2013 program group, and inside of it you can see that I've got my control panel, my deployment wizard, the management shell, which is my command line interface, and I also have a link for my topology builder. Now that we have seen how to install the Link Server 2013 administration tools, let's take a closer look at the Link Server 2013 control panel. The Link Server 2013 control panel is a web-based administration portal. Microsoft developed the Link Server 2013 control panel on top of Microsoft Silverlight. So when you go to connect to the admin console for the first time, you don't want to be surprised when you're prompted to install the latest version of Microsoft Silverlight. Now for complex administration, you typically want to use the Link Server Management Shell. The Link Server Management Shell provides a lot more flexibility and also provides access to a lot of functionality that you cannot perform inside of the administration console of the control panel. But keep in mind that your control panel still runs on top of the PowerShell, and PowerShell 3.0 is a requirement to install the admin tools. And it's also required to run your control panel. For those of you coming from the Office Communication Server 2007 R2-based environment, keep in mind that we do not have an MMC console anymore. Your Link Server 2013 GUI-based control panel is the replacement to the MMC console. Let's take a look at what the control panel looks like. Now, before we go through this demonstration, you want to know that this is just going to be a quick tour, a very brief demonstration to get you acclimated to the control panel. Don't worry about the details right now, because as we go through the remaining videos in this series, we're going to talk about a lot of the properties in a lot more depth. Let's take a look at the control panel. Now, the first thing is that the control panel is a web-based application, and the control panel is automatically installed on your Link 2013 front-end server or standard edition servers, and it's represented as a virtual directory inside of IIS. So how do I get that virtual directory? Well, you install Link and that's it. It's automatically deployed. So as an example, if I click on the Internet Information Services, you can see that inside of here I have a virtual directory labeled CSCP. That is my Communication Server Control Panel. So when you open up the Administration Console, the control panel, that's exactly what you're connecting to. Now, the other thing that we have to understand is that we automatically route over to this by means of the administrative simple URL that we have defined inside of our topology builder. And how do we route over to the front-end server or to the pool? Well, in my case, I'm using admin.carvrockfitness.com, and inside of DNS, I have created a host record, an A record that maps that name down to the IP address of my front-end server pool, which in my case is just a single IP address right now. Let's take a look at the control panel. Now, as you open up your control panel, you're prompted for your credentials. Now, I'm logging in as administrator at carvrockfitness.com, and I'll put in my password. And now, based upon my level of access, I will now have the ability to perform whatever administration I will be able to perform. And what I mean by that is that role-based access control will enforce my level of access. Well, fortunately for me, I am a top-level administrator. I'm the CS administrator. Now, when you first open up the control panel, you can see that it brings me to the home link. It says Welcome Administrator, which is my user account, and then I can view my roles, and I'm expecting to see CS Administrator. You also have some quick links to perform top actions. So if I want to enable users for Link Server, if I want to edit or move users from one pool to another, or if I want to view the topology status, which is basically a quick link over to the topology tab. And if you've deployed the monitoring server reports, you'll also have the ability to gain access to your monitoring server reports right here. Later on in the course, we'll see how to deploy the monitoring server reports, and we'll see how to use them. Now, over to the right, we also have our quick resources like Getting Started, First Run Checklist, information regarding using the control panel, and Microsoft Link Server 2013. These are just links to online resources. We also have information regarding getting help and some quick links out to the community for forums and blogs. As I go through the demonstration, just keep in mind that this is just going to be a brief tour, because later on throughout the course, as we go through the different videos, we're going to see a lot of these properties in a lot more depth. On the Users tab, here's where you can enable users for Microsoft Link, and you can also modify users that are currently enabled for Link. So if I want to search for users, I can use Find. If I want to enable a user for Link, I can click Enable User, click Add, and then search for the users that I want to enable. So here I have an account for myself, Steve McCassie, We'll click on OK. I will then assign the user account to a pool. So here I only have one pool, pool.carverockfitness.com. And then I will specify the SIP URI format that I'm going to use. And this is used to establish communication sessions for things such as instant messaging, audio-video conferencing, and things like that. Now, a lot of organizations will use the user's email address. Why? Because it's unique and it also causes less conflict. But as you'll notice, we can also use other formats. We can also define the telephony integration, whether the clients can use PC to PC audio, or maybe we're going to allow the clients to use enterprise voice so that they can use Microsoft Lync as their voice over IP solution. And you'll notice down below we can also define various policy types for the user. On your topology tab, this is where we have a quick view of what's going on within the environment. You can quickly establish the status of your servers, and if you want to see more detailed information regarding your servers, you can view their status right in here. Now, from inside of the console, you can also go to your action drop-down menu list. You can stop services, you can start services, you can also prevent any new sessions with the services on one of your servers. On the Instant Messaging and Presence tabs, this is where you can define file and URL filters. So you can have your Microsoft Lync server filtering out certain types of content. Now, with CarveRock Fitness, we've only deployed the product internally so far, so it's not that big of a deal yet. But when we set up the Microsoft Lync 2013 Edge services and we connect to the internet, it's going to be more important that we establish some filters so that we don't get damaging content sent into our environment. Now, we also have persistent chat, and this is a new feature that has been added into the Microsoft Lync Server 2013 control panel. With the prior version of Lync 2010, you had to download chat and install it as a separate component, and also administer it through a separate tool. Well, now it's built right into your control panel. On your voice routing tab, this is where you'll configure the bulk of your settings for enterprise voice. For example, this is where you define your dial plans, and dial plans control the rules for normalization. The rules for normalization dictate how a number you dial gets translated over to an E.164 format. When you dial a number, the system has to translate it into a format that it understands, so it knows how to route the call. Well, we also have voice policies, and voice policies control the features that you can use, as well as where you can call to, through PSTN usage records. We configure routes, and routes define the gateways that calls get passed to. We can also define trunk configurations, which allow us to configure how a number gets formatted before we pass the call over to a gateway. Underneath your voice features, we can configure something called Call Park. Call Park allows you to take a call that came into your phone and transfer it over to a temporary extension. It's like putting a call on hold, but it frees up your phone line. We can also use the unassigned number application component, which is part of RGS. And the unassigned number application support allows me to play recordings for somebody that dials an invalid extension, or more specifically an extension that's not being used by somebody in your organization. So instead of just getting disconnected, we can play a message for somebody and then route their call somewhere else or disconnect them. The Response Groups tab allows me to configure the automated call distribution of Microsoft Lync. This is where you can configure your queues, your groups, and your workflows, and the workflows can be either simple or what we call basic workflows, or they can also be advanced interactive workflows. For example, for marketing, press or say 1. For sales, press or say 2. On the Conferencing tab, we can configure conferencing policies, we can configure dial-in access numbers and the corresponding languages supported by those dial-in access numbers, and we can also define the PIN policy, like for example, by default Microsoft requires your PIN to be at least 5 digits in length, and you cannot use common patterns, like for example 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the Clients tab, we have the ability to define client version policies, so you can define what type of clients are allowed or denied the ability to connect and register into our Lync 2013 environment. We can also configure device updates, which are basically patches to your IP-based phones. And you can also push out your mobility policies from inside of here as well. That's a new feature with Lync 2013. Underneath Federation and External Access, this is where we can define what type of traffic is allowed across the Microsoft Lync Server 2013 Edge server. Just because you set up an Edge server, it doesn't mean you're going to allow all sorts of traffic across it. So for example, here, if you look at my policy, you can see that we can define what type of traffic is going to be enabled or not. Underneath your monitoring and archiving, this is where we can configure a lot of the settings for your monitoring services and your archiving, including the policies that we want to deploy, whether we want to enable the features or not, and also how long we're going to maintain archived content. So for example, if I look at archiving policy, I can choose what type of content I want to archive, internal, external. I can also specify how long I want to maintain content. Underneath your Security tab, we can configure the registrar policy settings, our web services, and our PIN policy settings. Well, as an example, your registrar is the piece that handles the authentication of your clients. And as you can see here, I'm currently allowing Kerberos, integrated Windows authentication, and also certificates-based authentication within my environment. Now finally, underneath the networking configuration, this is where you can define your call admission control settings, and if you want to enable something called media bypass. You also have the ability to define location policies, which are used for E911. And then you've got a bunch of different tabs that are used to configure a lot of the settings for call admission control, which is our bandwidth management feature, which allows us as administrators to define how much bandwidth will be allocated for real-time audio and/or real-time video. Well, now that we've seen a tour of the control panel, let's take a look at the Link Server Management Shell. Well, what exactly is the Link Server Management Shell? It is your command line interface to administer Microsoft Link Server 2013. The Link Server Management Shell is basically a snap into the PowerShell. So when you install the Link Server 2013 administration tools, you will get an additional module that can get loaded into the PowerShell. And that module is called Link. So when you have that Link module loaded into the PowerShell, you now have access to roughly about 550 product-specific commandlets. Now, the Link Server Management Shell is a very robust advanced administration interface. Well, of course you can use it for basic administration, but you can also use it for much more complex administration that you would not be able to perform from within inside of your control panel. Now keep in mind, you cannot perform all tasks from within the control panel. So at certain times as an administrator of the Link Server product, you are going to have to interface with the Link Server Management Shell. Let's take a look at some examples of how to use the Link Server Management Shell. Let's take a look at using the Link Server Management Shell. But before we get going with our demonstration, just keep in mind that this is going to be a 5 or 10 minute brief overview. Here I've opened up my Link Server Management Shell, and you'll notice that the basic syntax that you typically use with your Link Server Management Shell is a verb followed by the dash and then some form of a noun. Like for example, I could use a get-cs user commandlet and pull back a listing of my Link enabled users. Well, here's an example that you may find useful. Get-help. I'm going to use the same exact commandlet, but then I'm going to follow it by a commandlet that I need help on how to use. So here we'll use get-help followed by new-cs voice policy. Now, if you're new to the Link Server Management Shell, this help probably doesn't do a whole bunch for you because it does not give you a breakdown on how to use the syntax, and it's not giving you examples on how to use the commandlet. So let's take a look at another example. But before we do that, you'll notice that it gives me the name of the commandlet, new-cs voice policy. It also provides a synopsis or a little bit of an overview of what the commandlet is used for. Well, let's take a look here. I'm going to use the same exact commandlet, but at the end of the commandlet, let's type in here -examples. Now, as I start to type in the option, I'm just going to hit my tab key and watch it autofill. Now I can see some examples on how to use the commandlet. Now this time I'm going to see detailed output. Get-help followed by the commandlet new-cs voice policy -detailed. Now this is going to bring back detailed information regarding how to use all those different options that go along with the commandlet. This is one of my favorites. So now I can scroll up and I can see a listing of the different options and what they actually represent. Here's a couple of other examples. Get-service will give me a listing of my Microsoft services running on my machine, or also the services that are not running. Now, if I want to look at services specific to Microsoft Link, I can use the get-cs Windows service commandlet. Here's a couple of other examples. And this time what I'm going to do is type get-service, and I want to filter out what I'm looking for with the -display name option. And this time I'm going to look for services that have Windows in their name. So here I have get-service -display name *Windows*, and I should see a listing of all of my services that have the word Windows in the namespace. Now at the top of the list you can see that I have Windows Audio Endpoint Builder, and I also have Windows Audio. Well, if I don't want to see any audio services popping up, I can run that same exact commandlet, but at the end this time I'm going to put in an exclude statement, and let's exclude anything that has *audio*. And you can see how I can now filter down. Now, one of the things that you'll also see as we go through some of the videos is that you can also pipe the results of one commandlet into another. So maybe I use a get commandlet to find the results, and then I pipe the results into a set commandlet to make a change to the objects. So for example, I might get my link enabled users and then pipe the results into a move commandlet and move the users over to a separate pool in bulk. As we're using the link server management shell, or as we're using the control panel, you have to remember that both of these are actually running on top of RBAC. So your level of access is going to dictate which commandlets you can use and what you have the ability to administer. Let's take a look at role-based access control. As of Microsoft Link Server 2010, Microsoft has been using role-based access control as the underlying security model used for Microsoft Link. Now, if you're not familiar with role-based access control, it's a security model based off of different roles. So for example, when you install Microsoft Link Server 2013 into your environment, one of the things that we did is prepare the forest. And when we prepared the forest, we ended up with a bunch of universal security groups, and those universal security groups are linked to roles. So role-based access control is based on a security best practice. When we add you as a member to a group that's linked to a role, that role has access to different commandlets. So as an example, if I were to add you as a member to the CS Help Desk group, you would be able to use whatever commandlets are linked to that specific role. Like for example, you could lock or unlock a user's PIN. But if you were inside of that group, you would not be able to set up voice policies. Now, with Microsoft Link Server 2013, you can go in and you can create your own roles, and you can also customize which commandlets are available to the roles. So for any of you coming from a prior Microsoft Link 2010 background, with Link 2010, you could create your own roles, and you could also define filters on those roles. So for example, maybe I want to create a new role for user administration, but I don't want you to be able to administer all users. Maybe I only want you to be able to administer users within a certain OU. Well, that's called a filtered scope. And not only can we define filtered scopes like we could with Link 2010, we can also specifically modify the commandlets that are available inside of the different roles. So we now have a lower level of access that we didn't have with Link Server 2010. So to provide you with the mile-high view of what's happening, when you extend your Active Directory schema and then you prep your forest for Microsoft Link, you get a bunch of universal security groups. And those universal security groups are linked to different roles. And those roles are defined by the different commandlets that you can actually use. So in a lot of cases we'll hear the term roles and role entries. So you may have the CS Help Desk role, but that CS Help Desk role is defined by a bunch of role entries which define which commandlets you can actually use or not use. Now, as we go through the demonstration in just a moment, you're also going to see that Microsoft has added a couple of new roles with Link Server 2013. And if you're new to the product, don't worry about it. We'll give you an overview of all the different roles so you feel comfortable when you're looking at them. Let's take a look at a demonstration and see how this is laid out. Let's start off the demonstration by opening up Active Directory's Users and Computers. Inside of Active Directory's Users and Computers, inside of your user's built-in container, you can see that I've highlighted the Microsoft Link Universal Security Groups that are used for role-based access control. These are the same universal security groups that got created as you prepared your forest for the installation of Microsoft Link. Your CS administrator is the top-level administrator for your Link environment. They can perform all administrative tasks, and they can also define roles and add members to the groups. We have CS Archiving Administrator. These are administrators that can configure the archiving policies and the archiving content. Help Desk administrators have limited troubleshooting capabilities. Your location administrators are people that administer your emergency services in E911, better known as the Location Information Services. Now you'll also notice that Microsoft has added a new category called Persistent Chat Administrator. We didn't have this with Link Server 2010. It's brand new. We have the CS Response Group Administrator. The CS Response Group Administrator is your automated call distribution administrator. These are people that can configure the automated call distribution, your workflows, your queues, and your groups. We have response group managers. This is used to define administration for specific workflows. Link supports server administrators. Server administrators can start and stop services. They can reboot your servers. They can also reconfigure your services for Microsoft Link. A user administrator for Link can provision users for the communication server-based environment and apply policies to the users and possibly move users from one pool over to another. The view-only administrator has the ability to monitor your Microsoft Link server, and they have read access to your Link information. And then finally at the bottom of the list, we also have our voice administrator. The CS Voice Administrator is an enterprise voice administrator. They can define things such as voice policies, dial plans, trunks, routes, PSTN usage records, things like that. Let's take a look at a couple of examples of how we administer RBAC coming in through the command line.
As I go through my Link Server Management Shell demonstrations, you may notice that I've pre-populated my buffer, the cache with commandlets, or in some cases I'll copy my commandlets from Notepad and paste them inside of the Link Server Management Shell. I'm doing this so that we can be efficient with the demonstrations during the videos. Microsoft Link Server has some very lengthy commandlets. We don't want to waste a lot of time typing them out.
Here you have an example of the Link Server Management Shell, and I've got a commandlet inside of the shell, get-cs admin role. I want to retrieve a listing of my administrative roles. Now you'll also notice that I'm taking the results of that commandlet and I'm piping it into a where statement, so I'm going to filter it out. I'm filtering based off of the standard roles. You can see that that's equal to true. And I'm going to take the results and put them in a format table, and it's going to be a very simple output. The only thing I want to see in my table is the identity of my standard roles. And there we go. Let's take a look at some other examples. In this second example, I have get-cs admin role where isStandard role is set to true. I'm going to take the results and put them out into a table format, but I also want to see the commandlets that apply to those different roles. So let's hit enter. Let's take a look at one more commandlet. What if I want to see the commandlets that pertain to a specific role? Well, we have a commandlet for that also. Let's take a look. Here you can see that I have the get-cs admin role, CS user administrator. So I'm retrieving the role called CS user administrator, and I'm specifically going to expand the property for commandlets. I want to see which commandlets are available for this specific role. And there you can see as they scrolled up my screen. Well, that's the end of the demonstration, and I hope you've enjoyed the video on administration of Link Server 2013. We'll see you in the next video.